Hi, this is Jack.
Hey Jack, how's it going?
Good, Eric. How are you?
I'm doing well. Just going through some documentation and prep for this call.
Oh, awesome. Yeah.
Always good to just refresh, right?
Oh, absolutely.
So, how are things over at Oracle?
They're pretty good. We had a tough week, but we made it.
That's what matters, right? Getting through.
Yeah. How about you? Where are you based?
Main Sail Industries, and I'm based out of Virginia.
Region? Oh, not too far.
So yeah, not. Are you? Where are you at?
I'm at Boston. So
Oh,
like, but
yeah.
north. Yeah.
My daughter's up that way.
Oh, okay. Cool.
Hey, Mark, good to see you.
Greetings, everyone. Hello.
Hey, Mark.
Good time of day. Good morning to me.
Hey, okay.
Alright. So, let's see. Let's start sharing the screen. Meeting minutes go in the chat. Please add yourselves.
Yep, already.
Seeing everyone. I'm just waiting. As usual, we're just going to give people a couple of minutes to join. Um, Manu, I would like to offer you an opportunity and perhaps next week if you want to take it. I'm actually not going to be here. I'm taking my remaining vacation. But if you want to perhaps walk the SIG through what HashMesh is doing in the identity space, might be a good
Was that for Manu?
Manu, yeah.
He's not on yet.
Why somebody put his name down. Okay,
Yeah,
I'll ask him once he joins again. All right.
I think maybe he's put it down, but he hasn't. Oh, he just joined. He
All
just.
right.
Well, there is Manu. Speaking of him.
Yes. Hey, Manu, can you hear me?
I can. Give me a sec. I'll be right here.
All right, sounds good.
Just setting up.
Mm-hmm.
Too many windows.
No worries.
All right.
So what I was gonna say, Manu, next week I'm not here.
Okay.
I'm taking vacation, but let's not have a good meeting go to waste. I was gonna offer you an opportunity to explain how HashMesh views identity to this
Okay.
group. Might be not a bad idea, and because there is recording, I'll also get to see it.
Yeah. No, that's a good idea because the timing is just about right for us. We have a draft version now of the doc that we can share. So I
Yeah, I
think
just
it's
want to
great.
make sure that different perspectives are presented. Like I'm certainly driving a particular vision,
Yeah.
but it's certainly not the only vision out there and the only thing that's possible. So we need to make sure that we have all of these, different variants, especially if we're going to have a sensible reference architecture. So other folks, if you have your own perspectives, make sure to, add yourselves to the agenda and have it.
Just 1 second for him.
Right.
That's
So
great. Thanks.
yeah, let's get started. I want to walk you through a completely unordered list of things that I thought might be worth bringing up today. So I'm actually going to start from the bottom, given that it's an unordered list. So ITF Rats has published a draft, AR4SI, so attestation results
This is what
for,
we're working on.
I don't know, system integrity or something. I
This
don't
is
know.
what we're working on is all
Eric, can you mute, please?
stuff. Oh, sorry. Yes, I apologize. Yep, sorry about that, gentlemen.
All right. So I looked at it, and I suggest you do too. And the way I explained it to my colleagues at work was that it has the look and smell of a bunch of engineers and their breadboards. It certainly has its place. I'm not saying it doesn't, but it basically says when an attester talks to a relying party, it should present this construct. And this construct has a lot of fragility to it. So if a relying party were to build a authorization policy around the kinds of things that are presented to it, then certainly a lot of enterprise clients would find that approach not possible to deploy. That's kind of a death knell. But I'm also sure that there are markets and situations where that's exactly what's needed. I am now in back channel communications with Hank and Thomas and Peter Castleman from Whimsy, basically saying, what do you guys think about this? And shouldn't RATS also explain how it can impedance match with Whimsy? So that's sort of one thing that we can look over today. But okay, pushing that to the side. Following our meeting last time, I did put together this one-page doc that's again referenced here. And that's the second bullet from the bottom. And that's something explaining what a typical data and use protection use case in the enterprise might look like. And at the end, there is basically a one-line question exercise. Show me how this can be done using the RATS reference architecture. And of course, it's a gotcha question because I don't think it can. Certainly not in any format. So again, I wish Hank and Thomas were here today, but I am certainly going to suggest, and perhaps with the help of this working group, we may put together an informational draft of some sort, asking or maybe our own proposal for how RATS and Whimsy could be in this match. But again, it's a proposal at this point. I'm not saying it should be a task we should do, but I specifically did not say anything in this enterprise use case document, any suggestion at a solution. I'm just saying the end result ought to look something like this. So yeah, please review, comment. I received some emails sort of in my private email with thoughts on that, and there was sort of a long email exchange. I might forward my response to one of the comments that was like the most extensive to the mailing list the SIG mailing list. So you can take a look at sort of the deeper thinking there. All right, so there is this issue that I think can be closed, but I think it was Matesh who raised it, and I don't see him here. So we may perhaps not go over that today. And finally, there is this, so a former colleague of mine, Ryan Hurst, runs this unmitigated risk comment. He is one of his favorite topics and areas of expertise is identity. So he wrote this really fantastic article, I thought, on agentic identity and the specific challenges to it. And he makes a compelling case that we should issue short-lived identities to agents that are strictly sandboxed in what these identities can do. But if you follow that logic through, the one thing it calls for is effectively a 6 nines available infrastructure level verifier, which is an engineering challenge to develop and deploy correctly, which would then every enterprise that does agentic AI would have to put up. I am not aware of any verifier today that can handle that kind of load with that kind of reliability. But that's something that would be called for, and I back-channeled with Ryan, and he said, yes, absolutely, you're right, that would be a requirement here. But then there are other things like, do we keep generating keys? Do we keep certifying keys? Are there vulnerabilities involved in key reuse? Are there, in fact, vulnerabilities having to do with keys getting cached and retrieved by the workload, and perhaps to elevate privileges and use different credentials? And there is all sorts of questions, and the threat model around that is probably worth working out. So I raised a sub-issue under another TWI issue specifically to address that. Okay, so those were my list of things for today. Notice the additional work on reference architecture is not on here, and I'm really anxious to dive into that as well. But that's something else we can discuss, like how best to advance it. We've done a lot of work in the spring, and then it's stalled. All right, so I'm done talking with my intro. I want to open the floor to suggestions as to, which way should we go today? Oh, Peter, hi. I see you are here today.
Hey, Mark.
Hi. So have you seen, I messaged you and Thomas and Hank, since you're here, welcome, about this whole AR4SI RADS draft and the need to impedance match RADS with Whimsy. Do you have any thoughts?
I'm just back from vacation, Mark, so I'm barely paging in things at this point. So I did see the message, but I haven't had time to dig into any of the details of it.
I see. Okay, well then let's wait until you have the chance. I guess I'll just repeat something I said perhaps before you joined, is that RATS published this new draft attestation results. I don't know for system integrity, I don't know what SI stands for, I can guess. And I messaged, sorry, I said early in the meeting that it has the look and feel of a bunch of propeller heads with their breadboards. It is a way of structuring attestation results for relying party consumption in a way that would create highly fragile authorization policies. And my comment was that to you, Hank and Thomas, as people active in the space, that I think RATS and Whimsy working groups need to talk and need to create an impedance match between them. And to that effect, there is an enterprise use case that I wrote reference in the bottom, second bottom bullet that talks about specifically how I would like RATS to be able to issue spiffy or Whimsy compatible credentials to workloads. So, but if you're still back from vacation, let's continue this discussion once you're up to speed. Anybody else with any thoughts on what we ought to tackle today?
But the one thing I'd like to say is on the on Ryan's first paper, I think it is indeed a fantastic article. I think the last piece jumps to conclusion, and the 6.9 attestation infrastructure, or verifier infrastructure is true, but only with the current way of thinking about its implementation. We believe that there's a way to actually manage delegate authority and delegate attestation result a little bit in a ceiling type of way, all the way down to the workloads themselves, so as close to the workloads as possible, in a way that doesn't put that ultra strict requirements on the verification infrastructure itself.
Well, that would be fantastic, except he also calls for credentials being super short-lived.
Yeah, and that itself, I think, is true in a certain way of looking at the problem. But if you look at the problem differently, that goes away.
Right.
And that's our perspective, and I'll try to connect those dots next week when I talk about it.
Absolutely. I think that would be fantastic. But I encourage everyone to read that article, and it's extremely well written. And then I suppose once more people read it, we can have a discussion around it. But I'm now tracking I sort of handling agentic AI and these considerations with an issue in GitHub.
Yeah, to Manu's point around the oh, sorry, Eric has his hand up.
No, go ahead, Peter. I'll go after you're done. Go ahead and finish your thought.
I was just going to say to Manu's point, I think the availability side of things, there's all sort of clever things that you can do on the engineering side. I mean, even in the Spiffy universe, what we see there is, you don't wait for the credential to be expired before you issue a new one. You issue it well in advance, right? And there's caching strategies and all sorts of ways to manage that. So just putting that out, as I think there are probably clever things, as Manu points out, there's probably more clever things that people can do to deal with the availability challenges. But it is good to point it out. I agree.
Yeah, and Peter, I 100%. I think what happened to us when we stumbled into a solution is that, if you stick with the problem longer, you just start saying, oh, wait a minute, maybe we could do this and we could do that. And then suddenly strategies unfold that you thought were not possible before. So it very much is a case of that. So agree and appreciate the comments.
So, Do we want to give any consideration when we're discussing this to a continuous authentication or authorization as it relates to workloads specifically? So to Manu's point, right? The short-lived, and I haven't read the full article, so I need to read the full article that Mark's presented, right? But one of the things that I've been focused on as of late is very short-lived credentials that lead to a continuous authorization. Does that track with anyone?
Can you speak a little bit more to what you mean by continuous authorization with short-lived credentials?
Absolutely. So you take a short-lived credential that rotates on a particular time basis, whatever that short-lived period is, right? That TBD. For AI models, it looks a little bit different. And then going back to the not necessarily a tester, but the verifier, right? And ensuring that there's a chain of causality with the credential. Does that make sense, Mark? So I'm going to expect this type of credential to follow what the previous credential was. And it's a compounding credential that allows you to create continuous authentication, right? And if I see something outside of what I would expect to see, then I remove the authentication for that workload. And I no longer consider it a trusted workload.
I have never seen that done in practice, so I'm trying to honestly digest what you just said. And Abdullah, I'm just gonna get to you in a second. Are you talking about chaining credentials ad
I am.
infinitum until, and there is some sort of a revocation service that allows you to say, stop trusting this chain?
Correct.
And when you present such credentials over like to establish secure channel or establish things over HTTP, you don't think you're going to blow up existing protocols?
Um, I don't know. I haven't gotten in and tested it very much yet. It's
Okay,
something I'm working on now, and I
okay.
don't have the answers. I just want to know if that's something that
Yeah,
appeals
I
the
would love to see a
interest
proof of
as a
concept because I
roadmap.
would be worried about specifically, like, if you're doing it with an HTTP header with a 64K buffer limit, you're going to blow it up, right? Like happens with
Mhm.
Kerberos. And if you're using it with, again, it would be really nice to know what happens after, like, several thousand of these credentials are accumulated. Abdullah, you have your hand up.
I guess a question on that, Eric. So how does that work for, you mentioned AI agents, and I think that we generalize the usage of that word, but the reality is that you can spun up two identical AI agents, and over time they're gonna change behaviorally wise, and they might initially have the same kind of like remit of activities, and that potentially would speak to the compound, kind of like or historic usage of those credentials, but then eventually it wouldn't, right? So how do you deal with that non-deterministic nature of the agents themselves?
So as the role of the agent changes, right? Because what you're referencing is kind of a dynamic role, but also a dynamic credentialing, correct?
Yeah, well, yes. I mean, it's just simply that it depends really on how you're defining AI agent. I mean, a lot of the assumption right now is that an AI agent will contain just a specific type of model, which typically we, as an industry, are inclined to think about LLMs. But the reality is that we might have one or more models, right, being
Hmm.
leveraged by the AI agent. And it might, if it's LLM, they will diverge in terms of behavior, even if
Yep.
they have the same training data set, right? So long as there is something such as weights involved that might have different behavior in the model performance.
So I don't think it would be tied so much to the specific model performance, right? So much as it would be tied to the hardware on which it's running, right? So the model we're talking about focusing on leveraging the trusted execution environment, and then how do we verify not only attestation provenance of a particular workload, And that could be any type of workload, right? We're not getting specific on that at this point. I've looked at some of the capabilities of the agent and I agree with you, that's kind of a misnomer, right? People are calling things agents that are really just small language models that are operating outside of a larger language model as a contributor, but not necessarily as anything else, right? I don't know how that looks as the dynamic shift changes for how that, and we'll use the word agent for lack of a better one now, how that workload shift would impact the credential itself. Because if we're chaining credentials, our focus is on the workload itself and the content that the workload is producing back to that larger language model. So if it dynamically shifts because the task and purpose of that particular workload changes, I don't think that changes the credentialing, unless it gets so far outside of the scope that it's not even considered a contributory agent to the larger language model.
So what I'm hearing is it sounds like more of us need to read this write-up specifically, and then perhaps we can have a discussion on the mailing list, and then once and surface it up here in the SIG once we have a sense of how best to handle it. But
Yeah.
Manu, you have your hand up on that.
Yeah, so in our work with NATO and super critical use cases like defense, but also finance, healthcare, any other high assurance environments, what became clear to us is that we need to separate. There is so an agent. We should define the term agentic and agent for us within the CCC as being within this work group about a workload that's going to act on behalf of another entity.
Mm-hmm.
And if that's the case, that workload will have to carry and have agency literally over the credentials of the entity or credentials that have been delegated to the workload on behalf by the entity. And that in our world, in any high assurance world, precludes the handling of, and I think Ryan's paper alludes to that, the handling of credentials directly to a probabilistic workload like an LLM or something like that. So I just submitted a talk for RSA next year. I don't know if it's going to get accepted, but the idea is to say a probabilistic agent, an AI agent, would actually have to be backstopped by a deterministic agent that is verified. Essentially, if you come from the identity world, you may have heard about identity wallets and keychains. So the wallet agent, if you want, has to backstop and hold the credentials, and then in our world, basically do the attestation of the probabilistic agents that it's providing services to. And that separation of concerns then eliminates that problem. You have credentials and the human in the loop, the necessity of verifying or authorizing the transactions that the LLM is going to try to take on behalf of the entity. All of that needs to be deterministic. And by the way, will need to be cryptographically logged, right, in a way that can be then audited later and then potentially reversed. So there's a separation of concern. I think in our case, for this working group, defining agentic as a workload that acts on behalf of another entity, not necessarily an AI workload, right?
Yeah, any workload
is gonna help us a lot.
Let me challenge that. Let me challenge that. So,
go ahead.
Lifting the lid on a discussion we've had among my architect colleagues at the firm. So apparently there is now a cottage industry spinning up, saying that, well, so we have human identities and we have non-human identities, and then we have this third type called like agentic identities or whatnot. And the feeling certainly among my colleagues was that that's a bunch of baloney, that we have human identities, and that would be folks on this call, assuming none of you are bots. And then there is the non-human identity, and that is some software executing for a particular purpose, which is sort of the whimsy definition of workload. And the difference between traditional software that we think about as a non-human identity and the this new beast, the AI agent, is really in the types of, like, you may have different security considerations next to it, right? It's all of a sudden it's the model that determines execution. There is a level of randomness and unpredictability to it. So perhaps there are different controls involved in ensuring that it doesn't go rogue, but it's still a non-human identity. And what you just described, Manu, is some software acting on behalf of another entity. Well, we know what that is. That's delegation. That's constrained delegation, right? And it's not so like I can tell you that we're going to resist as the firm any vendor who tries to sell us on a third type of identity, because it's hard enough to manage the two that we got, and we need to harmonize those. But you are also correct in that we need to understand that when I launch an agent, I do not launch it with an unrestricted power of attorney to act as me in any context it wishes, for as long as the agent is running, and perhaps after my death. It is short-lived and it is constrained. So again, in the order, Manu.
Yeah, I love that idea of pushing back on vendors who are selling you on yet another type of identity, because in our world, there's only one type of identity. It's a unified identity model for all types of entities, including human entities. So there is no distinction in our world between human identities and non-human identities. In fact, interestingly enough, human organization and identities are just representation, digital representation of an external entity, but they're still represented and managed by a piece of code that exists somewhere in some execution environment. So there is no natively, right, in the digital realm, there's only two things. There are bits and there's execution environments, and there's nothing else. So everything, and then bits are code or information or data, and that's it. And so there is no concept of a human identity and non-human identity in our world. So I very much applaud that.
So the GRC SIG has succeeded in pushing CSA, and Eric and Peter, I'm going to get to you in just a second, has succeeded in convincing the Cloud Security Alliance, certainly, that under the IAM, Identity Access Management control domain, we need to harmonize human and non-human identities, right? So what you just said, Manu, is very much in line with that. But the difference does exist, and I believe, and the difference is in authentication. Because my agent is not going to authenticate with MFA. It's not going to go through the dance of biometrics. There is no such thing, right?
That is correct.
So it's going to come into being by a different mechanism. But once that harmonization to me means that for purposes of authorization, there isn't a significant difference. Maybe there is a flag saying this is a human, whatever. Maybe if there is if the function kill this identity, don't apply to humans, that sort of thing. Okay, Eric.
So I agree wholeheartedly, right? From our perspective, there is a singular identity, and I don't think that changes. What I think changes is, to your point, kind of the role of that identity, whether it's humanistic, whether it's non-human. But that, I think, is going to become convoluted over time, right? As we continue to see advancements, as we continue to see, I mean, it's very possible that we could end up having multi-factor authentication as a precursor to, call it code-based authentication, right? A non-human entity authentication, as they continue to grow and do more advanced.
That's already being created. That's called composite attestation, right? So you'll know which workload is running, where the device is physically located, and a bunch of other things. Peter, you have your hand up.
Yeah, I think you want to be careful about what a single, identity is an overloaded term, right? I can believe in a world where we have a single identifier system, maybe, but the reality that, the things that we see that go wrong is when you try and use a identity management system that is built for humans, and you try and use that for non-humans, right? That's where the whole service account disaster came from. And I think likewise, you'll run into similar problems the other way around because of you have to think about the join, move, leave motion. Humans join an organization in a certain way under certain conditions. Identity proofing is very expensive, right? The equivalent of attestation for a human, that's an expensive process. It involves, document verification, all sorts of things. And you do it once, and then you end up with these long-lived authenticators, right? I think, Mark, you made the point about authentication and MFA is kind of a band-aid that we had to invent because identity proofing for humans is expensive.
Yes.
And but with workloads and software specifically, devices have different characteristics because they have a different kind of join, move, leave motion, right? They can be sold, they can move between different vendors and so on. Software has a different kind of join, move, leave motion. It joins and moves, well, doesn't move so much, but it joins and enters your organization. One of the ways is through your CI/CD system. Another way is through sort of SaaS and procurement and so on. And so I think I think you need to be thoughtful about, yes, maybe there's a single authorization system that is aware of both human identity and machine identity or non-human identity. And it's really at the authorization layer where this difference comes in. But if you want to manage the life cycle of these things, you're look at service accounts, right? That's what happens when you use one system to manage everything because you're not thinking about the life cycle really. So just some sharing some bitter experience. I pasted a link where I kind of vented a little about this as well.
Let me, it would be good if you paste your link into the meeting minutes. Then it's not like chat kind of disappears, goes away, poof, after the meeting ends.
Okay.
But if you do that, it would be great. Or if you want, I can copy it for you.
If you can copy it, because I don't have the doc open.
Oh, okay. Let me pull up the chat. And Hank said he's delayed.
I was delayed. I'm now here. Sorry. Yeah.
No, you already posted it. Okay. All right, somebody type. I'm not going to type. Hank, welcome. So if you check your LinkedIn messages, I sent a message to you, Thomas Fasari, and Peter, who is on the call.
Oh.
And I basically asked for there to exist a RAT's response to how we're going to impedance match with Whimsy. And I would very much like you folks to chime in on that message. And again, I didn't do it on our try mailing list. I just wanted to involve specifically the principals from the RATs and Whimsy working groups. But it is my firm belief that certainly for a big subset of scenarios we care about, the two working groups need to, connect. And
that is actually perfect. So because I had a call with Thomas yesterday that we will reprioritize some work, and Forzi is now pretty much on top next to CoServe, which is great.
Yeah.
So you're we welcome this with open arms. Also, historically, Forzi was informed by the CCC. So the initial trust vectors are basically CCC output already. So there's a history of cooperation, obviously.
Great. Okay. And I guess what I'm looking for, again, from the principals from these two working groups is guidance as whether or how our working group here, which is part of Linux Foundation and not the IETF, might contribute to the next IETF. If there is a draft that we could author, or if there is any other way in which it would be best to involve ourselves in that. And I'm in particular a little suspect. I feel kind of suspect on this whole AR4SI draft because I believe it would lead to such a fragile story for relying party authorization policies. So I wanted to hear your feedback on, should I track it with them as an issue? Should I just let them run their course and do something else entirely? But that's the kind of, it's really great to have you guys here, so we can all get on the same page on the best way to proceed.
Mark,
it's
can you
unlikely that you will
briefly-
reach Thomas via LinkedIn. I just copied your message on another channel to him, so it will reach him actually.
Mark, can you say more about your concern in terms of what is the cause of the mismatch? 'Cause I'm not familiar with the draft or.
Oh, let's open it up. Let's take a look.
I mean, is there a specific, like, what is the thing that you think will cause things to be brittle?
Let's look it up. So here's the draft. Our friend Hank is on it, Thomas is on it, and let's get the sort of introduction. What are they trying to promise?
Hey, Mark, can you zoom in your browser window?
Absolutely.
So we can see that?
Anything for you.
Thank you.
All right, here we go. So, generated attestation results are ultimately conveyed to one or more relying parties. So we're here basically saying we need to get some sort of attestation results to relying parties, so that the reception of attestation result enables relying party to determine what action to take with regards to the tester. Awesome. So we're talking about authorization using attestation result. Great. And now we're going to say what information should be in there. Let's sort of, scroll down. So we're talking about, okay, non-reputable identity evidence, trustworthiness claims, claim freshness. Let's take a look at the kinds of things: chip vendor, chip hardware, target environment, target developer, some sort of instance, right? So all of this stuff. You know what my payroll database does not give a flying F about? Whether you're running on Intel or AMD. Okay.
There are, if you look closer, yeah, you're right. The trustworthiness vectors are the meat of this document. These are categories, right? So if you look a little bit more, then I understand that you do not want to burden the relying party with the technical details.
Yes.
That is why this is why the trustworthiness claims come in here. Which is actually telling you, which is a subset of what is telling you, and it's not complete. That is definitely true. What is actually protected? What you can expect to be protected? Like, is your memory protected? Are your CPU operations protected? Is conveyance on the bus protected? And all that.
Well, let me clue you in on a little secret. My relying party doesn't give a flying F about that either. You know what it cares about? It cares that the workload that someone outside of itself, someone outside of my relying party, has determined that this. Okay, let me pull up this other document just to make it. So this is my enterprise use case, right? So this is where I am a big fan of Spiffy. Spiffy will tell my payroll application that my payment disbursement app, which is this requesting workload, belongs to the same trust domain. So that's nice. It's my whatever, enterprise.com, jpmorgan.com. I want to know, as part of this URI, where it's running, whether per some other policy that the relying party doesn't control, but somebody else has determined that it's classified for, say, highly classified data, and what the application identity actually is, as in like payment disbursement app. All right. And my exercise to the reader, hopefully to you guys, is tell me how can rats do this for me. And again, what's great with Spiffy is that it gives you either a JOT, in terms of the Windows identity token or workload identity token, or it'll give you a certificate that can be worked with TLS. And for the life of me, I can't figure out how to make this AR4SI blob serve any one of those purposes. Manu.
Yeah, I think, just like I think the term agentic, we should define it for ourselves as something that acts on behalf of another entity. I think what you're trying to point out, Mark, is that the relying party wants to know that the workload is as intended by its provider.
Yes.
Because there is a trust. I mean, the provider is going to be trusted. You're gonna say, okay, I want to work with JP Morgan. If there's a JP Morgan workload that's exposed and that I want to connect to, you have to trust the provider of that workload. So the intent is to say it is, I think the necessary assertion to the relying party is that the workload is as intended by the provider. And that to me is what's needed, period, because then, and of course the agreement of where it runs and the various things that you had in there in the SPIFFE or the whimsy identifier is perfectly fine. And this could be conveyed by the identifier or could be conveyed by some attributes that are stored in some repository that basically enables just to look up and just figure out what the attributes of that workload is, like a workload profile, like you would have in an identity system, like a user profile, you have a workload profile. So whether it's conveyed by the identifier or whether it's conveyed by a repository, I think it's equivalent, but basically you want it as intended by the provider.
Yeah. So Hank, I can tell you, I'm impressed on you this thing. Rats can serve many masters, and bless your heart, please go do that. But one of the things that I believe must be addressed is the harmonization of human and non-human identity. It's very, very important to enterprises today.
Yeah, you're absolutely right. But let me quickly start where we were coming from, because this is all literally coming from the CCC, what is in here. But 2 years ago, and 2 years is an eternity. Maybe it's 2 eternities in computing science.
Yeah,
so
I certainly not coming from me at the CCC. I can tell you that.
That is correct. So let me show you. Maybe quickly.
And Eric, we'll get to you in just a second. I see your hand up.
Problem.
So there is something in the chat, Mark. If you could open that CCC resource and go to page 5, you will see where this is coming from.
Okay. So again, I will gonna copy this link into our meeting minutes, so everyone can copy
this is just
their own.
I would already call this document historic because it's from 2023. But it is explaining why the trustworthiness vectors are.
The CCC had its head up its ass on identity for a really long time, and this is why I started this SIG.
Yeah, I understand
that. I think we can be kinder on the CCC. I think it's an
I'm
evolution.
Just not. I'm a little uncouth in my communication. So please excuse me.
No, it's like a maturity.
I mean well.
It's a maturity model, right? It started at the chip level, and finally we're just going up the stack and figuring out what happens at the application layer.
Yeah.
So
it's so here on 5 on there's a picture on the diagram on page 5, which is I think in the middle of the page. Yeah, there it is. Yeah, this is this confidential computing versus the packaging of what you are running thing, and I was trying to disambiguate the scopes a little bit, and the trustworthiness claims only focus on this weird part that you don't get, that your specific interest is our interest here in SWI actually is not covered with. Correct. Which does not mean that we cannot add a lot of other trustworthiness vectors to the set that would cover this, and it's perfectly fine to do that. And also we have to maybe revisit this here, because again, this is 2 years old. I think the responsible parties who drew these diagrams are not active in CCC anymore.
Yeah,
both Eric and Dave aren't.
Okay. Let Eric because he's had his hand up for a while, and then I want to respond specifically to this diagram.
Yeah. So what I was looking at in the previous document, not this one, but I understand what you're saying on this one as well, is it's very much hardware based and not so much workload based. So I'm not seeing the path to maturity of a workload outside of, in this case, legacy SGX moving into TDX, et cetera. I'm not seeing the maturity into the application layer, right? I'm seeing the layer 1 capability in the previous document, but I'm not seeing where it matures into this. Where I'm not going to say I fully see that in Whimsy either, but I see it more in Whimsy.
Yeah. So there is room for understanding the way various workloads could be packaged in trust execution environments. All that knowledge, I assert, for the cases that my employer cares about. Okay, so I'm scoping my statement here. All of that knowledge needs to be contained inside the verifier. Further, it's important architecturally to understand that the reference values that the verifier uses to make up its mind around what attestation results to issue, they actually come from two places. One is the hardware owner and manager, and that's organizationally one thing. So inside JP Morgan, we have our own people managing data centers. And if we use Microsoft or any other cloud provider, they have their own data center management people. Right, so that's one set of reference values saying what do you expect out of the hardware you run on. And then the separate one comes from the software developer, the ones who run CI/CD pipelines, who maintain virtual machine images and all this other stuff. And then the verifier combines these two sources of truth. And my assertion is, sure, go ahead, do AR4SI for customers who care about it, right? That's outside the scope that I personally am driving for. But for human, non-human identity harmonization, for love of God, give me a whimsy token as an attestation result.
But draw the line for the whimsy token for me. Why does that matter? We're talking about focusing on the verifier taking the software capability or the however
Well, or
something
something similar to it. Maybe, it's just what Whimsy is good at is it gives you a provision for JSON Web Token, which is again a common standard in use, and it gives you an exfil and insert if you choose to go that way. And you can establish TLS channels. So you have all of those bases covered, and this wonderful construct inside of it is the URI, inside of which you can encode information of interest to you. Right, which is again gives you a degree of flexibility, and the beauty of it is entirely standards based, and it gives you an opportunity to create a super stable authorization policy on the relying party, which is such an important requirement. Again, for this niche of the market that I'm inhabiting.
Okay, so walk me through how that looks in your payroll application. Where
so
you don't care about you don't care
that's
about hardware attestation, you only
right.
care about software attestation.
Right. So
this is the setup.
This is the setup. So any workload that handles PII protects data in use. That's something that reduces your audit scope, even if no regulator is asking for it today.
So right there, you've got to have we'll take an Intel box just for grins and giggles. You've got you got TDX enabled, you've got your memory fully encrypted, your workload's good, you got an
well, attestation determines that, but we're basically saying protect your data in use. Now, it could be with armed guards around a caged box for all I care. That's a policy decision. Right? But that's like at the high level, that's what it means. Like we protect your data in use. Maybe you only allow one workload on the hardware box. Like there could be any number of ways of doing it, but we could do it with the trust execution environment. The next one is regulatory requirement. If my data is about a resident German citizen, the workload must also reside in Germany. Like go figure out how to do it, but deliver me this result.
Okay, then, but how do I attest that it's actually residing in Germany?
It could be that I have a contractual relationship with a cloud service provider, and under the penalty of significant financial, fines, they never lie to me about the control plane and attestation of TPMs.
Yeah.
All right. So then access to data on senior executive compensation. So how much money JP Diamond makes or JP Diamond makes, that's considered highly classified data. So your workload must, whatever policy exists for handling highly classified data, which again is determined by the corporate, whatever, but determined by special people who deal with that sort of thing. They'll tell you what that means. You just need to express in the identity sheet to the workload that those requirements have been met. And there's some evidence generated somewhere to do that. Okay, so our payroll database classified as containing PII, of course, and therefore, as well as any workload that retrieves PII from it, must likewise protect data in use, which means that we need to do workload to workload attestation or authentication authorization. And then finally, there is this client, the payment disbursement app, and that will invoke a special authenticated API that the payroll database exposes that lets it basically say which individual is owed how much in this, week's paycheck. So the solution that is spiffy centric, and again, we would like to what we don't want to do is we don't want to standardize on too many different ways of doing things. So we would like to standardize on, say, spiffy. right? And if we standardize on SPIFFE, then all our workloads, whether running in confidential environments or not, they get the SPIFFE URI inside of a JWT, a Windows Identity Token, or a site on X509 cert. And it gives you this URI format that we get to define, that says location is part of it, classification is part of it, and application ID is part of it. And then I can have this as my workload identifier, right? So my exercise to the reader is, can I take this AR4SI and turn it into that? And I don't think you can.
I don't know. I don't think you can either. Hank, what's your, you're more intimately familiar with this document than any of us.
This document means the R4Z, or this what we're looking at right now?
No. You're the RATs, IETF draft.
Yeah, the right. So the attestation right for secure interactions had a strong, I want to say, network vendor hardware CPU focus, obviously, right? So because it was like ARM and Cisco and such. So now we are moving up a few levels, and the principle holds, I think. The semantic framing, how to create new trustworthiness vectors, is the same. We just have to categorize them and understand what the semantics are and write them down. So I assume that is actually some handsome forth ping pong work to make it work for most. That's at least one approach. I try to lure Thomas here, but I'm afraid he won't be able to join this call anymore. But it is clear that and it's very correct that the trustworthiness vectors here are on the relying party really wants to understand what is protected if they share data with a confidential environment. How is it protected, and why should I care? This is not relevant to all relying parties, especially with the TRI context. There's a complementary set of trustworthiness vectors required to express that. And I would say the current document is pretty much not able to do that. That is absolutely right. But there is the framing to add these vectors to that. That is the open design of the whole R4Z document. That this is not a limit, not a finite list. It's intended to be extended, actually.
Okay.
So anyway, that is my humble request to Rats and Whimsy to work together and give us something we can live with.
Yeah, I
right.
don't feel this is a Whimsy thing at all, Mark. I mean, this is a
well, Whimsy defines a token format. I just like Rats to spit it out.
Well, and they're welcome.
And well, and then
on the format and spit it out.
And then what's on you guys is this pesky agent thing that grates me wrong.
Yeah.
And we should have a separate discussion around, can we tweak maybe the Whimsy reference architecture to make it a little bit more friendly to in the fact that the agent cannot be an external entity, but that may be a separate discussion.
Yeah, I mean, but in Madrid, I think Joe Soloway kind of indicated that he was more than willing to work with you on the wording around.
Yes.
So I would say just reach out to Joe.
I just want to point out that Whimsy very wisely stayed out of credential issuance, and then it put agent in its reference architecture, and that is the thing that's causing this friction.
I think also, if I may jump in here, there's another piece that Whimsy is silent about, is where the attestation reference values come from, how they process, and all that good stuff. So the bridging between Whimsy and Rats is more than just the agent itself. It's like you need to, I mean, it really is going down to the attestation layer, which Whimsy, I think, is not really set up to do.
And it's deliberate. That's deliberate, Manu. I think when it comes to attestation concerns, we view that as, there are so many ways to do attestation, etc. That is, there's Rats, but there are other ways and other, there's no shortage of ways in which people do attestation.
Hold on. I from the CCC point of view, attestation means hardware-backed attestation.
Correct.
So that's the important piece, is that and that is the highest assurance attestation that you can get. It's from the hardware itself, endorsed and all that good stuff.
That's fine, right? But that is a implementation choice for people who adopt, right? I think Whimsy specifically stays out of that. If CCC wants to, that is the core of CCC, fantastic. But from a Whimsy and Whimsy charter perspective, attestation is out of our scope. And you're welcome to, of course, go to RATS and create a draft and define how a Whimsy token might be used. I mean, you can even do that in the CCC, right? There's no reason for that, but Whimsy is not in the attestation business.
Yep.
Well, I look forward to working with you guys to see how this agent thing can be resolved. It hasn't been resolved to my satisfaction just yet, but we have a couple of workarounds.
If you again, for that, my recommendation is work with the editors of the document, right? Joe is and I think from the comments and discussions in Madrid, people are very keen to find wording that allows for these worlds to coexist.
Okay, we'll do that. I guess this is the working group in which we're hoping to, figure out how to influence the right people in the right ways. And I don't want to do it all by myself. I don't know if I'm smart enough.
You're smart enough, Mark.
Thank you. Anyone else? We have 5 minutes left. So great discussion today. I hope to make progress certainly on the RATS Whimsy impedance match. To reiterate, next week Manu will talk everyone through a perhaps different view of or different perspective on this workload identity business. I'm not going to be here, but please, still join, and I will watch the video. I'm looking forward to it. Any other parting comments in the last few minutes?
Look forward to it, Manu.
Thanks. I have work to do now. I need to clean up some slides and stuff. Yeah.
All right. Thanks, Peter.
Thanks, guys. Take care. Have a nice.
Yep.
Thank you, everyone, and see you next time.
Thank you, Mark.
All right.
Have a good vacation.
Any good links, put them in the meeting minutes.
Where are you going, Mark?
I'm taking my kayaks to Yellowstone and to Flaming Gorge in Utah, which are like kayaking paradises.
Beautiful.
Nice.
Good for you.
All right. Thank you.
Take care. Have fun.
Bye-bye.
Take care. Bye-bye.